Hello and welcome to or welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be discussing the second chapter of Michelle Easton's How to Raise a Conservative Daughter. If you haven't seen chapter 1 yet, I will link it in the cards up here somewhere. And well, so chapter 1 was Self-Worth Flows from God, Not Government, and it was long, very long. And chapter 2 is Family First. I'm not really one for intros, so let's just dive on in. In November of 1977, 15,000 pro-family supporters changed the course of history. Women from across the country showed up in droves to thwart the government-sponsored, I love how every mention of the government is supposed to be scary, National Women's Conference in Houston, Texas. The event was billed as an opportunity for American women to determine the future of our country. The conference was the culmination of a series of regional forums, and abortion and the so-called Equal Rights Amendment, so-called, were on the agenda, as was the government's role in enforcing them. Houston was supposed to be the left's crowning moment. But the conference was not really for all women as claimed. Conservative pioneer Phyllis Schlafly dubbed it the federal financing of a foolish festival for frustrated feminists. Schlafly led the pro-family counter-rally, where outnumbered and politically marginalized conservative women championed marriage, homemakers, the sanctity of life, and limited government. I still want to know how telling a woman she does not have full control over her body is limited government. Predictably, these conservative women were pilloried by the press. With smug condescension, they were characterized as opposing women's rights, which was absurd given that they themselves were women. Does Michelle not know that women can be against women's rights? Being a woman doesn't inoculate you from misogyny. Internalized misogyny is a thing. As a young woman living in Washington, D.C., I had researched the ERA. Like a lot of legislation, it sounded great until you actually looked at it. The pro-family attendees were right. The devil was in the details. So, in a shocking twist that surprises no one, there is no sources for this chapter. So I just took the liberty of fact-checking her myself, and I was going to say she should really pay me for this, but then that would make this point moot in her book, so I guess she probably wouldn't want to do that. Schlafly argued that the ERA would take away women's exemption from the military draft. True. Made unconstitutional single-sex schooling and activities, including sororities, Girl Scouts, and mother-daughter school functions. False. Interestingly, the only sources I could find claiming this are the Eagle Forum, which is Phyllis Schlafly's own interest group, and other right-wing forums. Per alicepaul.org, the ERA would not make all single-sex institutions unconstitutional. Only those whose aim is to perpetuate the historic dominance of one sex over the other. Single-sex institutions that work to overcome past discrimination are currently constitutional and are likely to remain so. And removed insurance companies' rights to charge women less than men. I'm going to assume she's talking about car insurance because that's definitely not a thing in health insurance, at least not in 2021. But assuming this is true, because nowhere did I find anything about regulating insurance prices, yes, your insurance rate should be based on you. Women shouldn't get a lower rate because they're women and are less cautious. Men shouldn't get a higher rate because they're risky. Your driving record should determine your cost. And if you're a new driver, there should be a blanket beginning rate that covers all new drivers regardless of sex. And this gets a false for me because I couldn't find anything to support it. Amongst other measures to achieve equality, why are there air quotes around equality? Do you believe such a thing doesn't exist or that it's foolish to want it? Ultimately, these conservative women helped defeat the ERA, and with it a massive expansion of government power. History is filled with courageous conservative women who embraced and defended the traditional family. Many began to have incredible careers promoting conservative ideas outside their homes as well, everyday heroines whom you never hear about. But these women were okay with that. They were too busy putting family first to care who got the credit. Why should family come first? Family is where it all begins. Family is a central organizing unit of society, the basic building block of all civilization, especially Western civilization. Especially Western civilization? Okay. When family comes first, children flourish. It's common sense confirmed by decades of studies. Intact families are healthier and more prosperous, on average, than broken families. Well, maybe if you didn't throw, stumbling blocks at broken families, maybe not call them broken families to begin with. There is good stuff in this book. Like common sense, well, I guess it's not really common sense if you have to write about it to get people to think about it. But just like good guidance in here that I wish my parents had used and that I would use should I have a daughter. Or son, because it can really apply either way. But her need to fearmonger, it ruins it. I mean, she could probably have sold so many more books if she had just written a regular parenting book instead of having to throw in fear about the government and the left. Not to mention the lies, but I guess that's what sells nowadays, so. According to research compiled by the Heritage Foundation, children from traditional families are more likely to find academic success, emotional stability, and good financial outcomes, whereas children raised in single-parent homes are more likely to drop out of school, suffer financial hardship, and commit violent crimes. Indeed, marriage reduces the probability of child poverty by 80%. I wonder what she means by traditional families. Would she concede that if two men or two women are raising children, they are still just as good as the old one-man, one-woman model? Let's be clear, there are many legitimate reasons why some children cannot grow up with a mother and a father. And we know government programs have driven fathers from many homes. So why did it drive fathers from homes and not mothers? Why didn't it drive both from the home? What does it mean to drive them from home? And why would it? Why would a government program cause someone to leave their home? And of course, Michelle herself raised 3 sons with a husband and with her parents across the street. I need a drink. She said to drink coffee while reading this, and that's what I'm doing. I honestly don't know how these single moms do it. The challenges are many. Lower income single mothers often live in dangerous neighborhoods with all manner of bad influences. These moms want the best for their children just like every parent, and somehow many of these amazing women manage to take their children to church despite working long hours and sometimes multiple jobs. They are truly remarkable. So if they're remarkable, Michelle, why don't you want them to make more money? That way they can live in a better neighborhood and, spend more time with their children instead of having to work multiple jobs. Also, where is your concern for single fathers? People of faith are called to care for those who need help, and conservatives have an obligation to do the same. Can someone in the comments please tell me the last time a conservative or Republican proposed family-friendly legislation? And by family-friendly, I don't mean ban abortion. I mean something that would actually help families and kids that are already on Earth. At the same time, it's more than a little ironic that wealthy liberals often choose traditional family lifestyles while pushing damaging anti-family policies on people who can least afford the consequences. Think about it from a practical perspective. 4 hands raising a daughter and 4 eyes watching her are better than 2. 2 paychecks are twice as much as 1. In fact, 2 federal minimum wage paychecks amount to more than the federal poverty level for a family of 4. For one, no one says you shouldn't get married. People say you should get married if you want to, not because you have to. We don't want to do shotgun weddings anymore, Michelle. Those are not good. And also, just because 2 people are living together or are married or whatever, it does not mean that this is an excuse to keep the federal minimum wage low because, if it's 2 people, then it's okay. It's enough money to live on. It should be enough money to live on as a single person as well. Tack on traditional upward mobility values as opposed to the progressive victim mentality, and poor families have a fighting chance. Is it a victim mentality to want better for other people than what they've had? Immigrant families understand this and in many ways represent the classic American dream. Well, at least she acknowledges that. That said, the traditional family isn't possible for some. Life is messy, things happen outside of one's control. So what do you do if your family of origin or your marriage is less than ideal? You do the only thing you can, your best. Apparently, the left does not like the overwhelming evidence that the nuclear family is the best framework for individual and societal well-being. It's the cure to so much of what ails us. Yet the family is under constant attack. Radical feminists, postmodern academics, and left-wing activist groups have waged war on family and marriage. Why? Because for leftists, strong families are bad for business. Dependency fuels leftism. When people have a family they can rely on, they are less likely to rely on government. So this does not make any sense to me. The government doesn't gain anything from giving people money, except maybe votes, but helping people when they're down does not create government dependency. It just makes it easier to leave a crappy job. Or to raise a child if you need extra assistance, which I would think Michelle would be in favor for because she's pro-life. And yeah, I'm using quotes because if you stop caring once a child is born, you're not really pro-life, you're pro-birth. Feminists know this. So they discourage the kind of relationships women have with men that make them happy. I do? Am I a bad feminist because I've dated men? Are they going to revoke my feminist card? A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, says a feminist credo that encapsulates the left's thinking. It was first popularized by the feminist icon Gloria Steinem in the 1960s and has become so common that you can buy t-shirts with this daft slogan on Amazon. Though it was attributed to Steinem, it was actually stated by Irina Dunn in 1970, not the 1960s. And I don't see what there is to disagree about this. Per Michelle's own words, women should be able to stand on their own 2 feet, so a man is a want, not a need. Why is that daft? Consider this broadside that was on the Black Lives Matter website just weeks before the 2020 election. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. Somehow that translates into the left's goal is to tear down the traditional family. But it says to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. So they're not going to help you raise your kid unless you're comfortable with it. And also, the left has a new slogan when it comes to child rearing. It takes a village to raise a child. That's not a new slogan. I've heard that for years. When I was a kid in the early 90s. That's not a new... okay. I'm from a very small, rural village. And there's always a joke that everybody knows you, who your parents are, who your grandparents are. So you really can't do anything bad because it will get back to your parents because someone will recognize you and tattle on you. So going by that, then if I was, say, 14 and I went to the convenience store to buy cigarettes and the cashier recognized me, should she just have kept quiet because, it wasn't her problem that I was buying cigarettes? It's really weird because also I've seen things from other conservative people like Candace Owens and Classically Abby, the world should be more kid-friendly, Lil Nas X and Megan Thee Stallion shouldn't have their, porn on TV. It's not kid-friendly. So, yeah, downfall of civilization, fear-mongering like that. So it's just kind of make up your minds. Is it taking a village or is it, every man for himself? In which case, if it's every man for himself, leave the rest of us alone. But even though it takes a village to raise a child, it's a very common, not new, old saying. This is how Michelle explains it. It's in fact a radical proposal that expresses a desire to disrupt the traditional family. Students of history might recognize the origin of the unsettling declaration as coming from Marx and Engels' Communist Manifesto. Abolition of the family. On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital, on private gain. In its completely developed form, this family exists only the bourgeoisie. But this state of things finds its complement in the practical absence of the family among the proletarians and in public prostitution. The left has declared war on the institution of family precisely because they know and fear its power. Put another way, marriage is a calling and family is a gift that must be protected. No one is coming for your marriage, just like no one is coming for your guns. And I would not call marriage a calling, and a good family is a gift. I know it might blow Michelle's mind, evil, feminist, leftist that I am. Single with cats in these advancing years. But I do think family is important. And I like this part. Families are about love. They transcend temporary relationships. You can't change certain things in life, such as where you are born, when you are born, and who your parents are. You get what you get. But when it comes to children, you get what you give. And she goes on to say, no family is perfect, but putting family first means prioritizing love, encouragement, understanding, hope, comfort, advice, and sacrifice. This family sounds great. Where can I find them? Eleanor, what are you doing? She's sitting there having hiccups while staring at the TV. Okay. Family is the single most important social institution in society. She keeps hiccuping. It is also the best defense against poverty, a vehicle for positive relationships, and a source of love and lifelong support. This all sounds great. Yet the traditional family is under attack. How? Radical feminists, left-wing activist groups, and other political pressures are tearing down the family to breed government dependency. I feel like she's already said this, and I still need sources. I kind of want to get married now, though. Non-traditional families can also take a family-first approach to raising girls by building strong, supporting relationships with grandparents, cousins, and church families. I would love it if by non-traditional she didn't mean single mother and a grandfather helping out, but 2 women or 2 men. But I have a feeling that's not what she's talking about. Marriage comes before children. Putting your family first can look a lot of different ways. Fundamentally, it's making family a priority. For parents, that means making their relationship primary, your marriage first, your kids second. This shouldn't be controversial, but in today's youth-obsessed culture, children too often receive a disproportionate share of attention. This creates a twofold problem. Kids grow up with an expectation that the world revolves around them and marriage relationships suffer. The love that a mother and father have for each other is the love model their daughters see. If parents respect and enjoy each other, girls notice. If they fail to nurture their relationship, they are setting a poor example. Parents don't have to take a children must be seen and not heard approach, but they do need to establish a healthy relationship structure. And it won't matter what we say if our actions don't match. Children learn by watching, and girls especially, need to see their parents in an authentic, loving relationship. They also need to be able to talk about it. I'm apparently a really bad feminist, leftist, pagan because I don't disagree with this. Thought for a very long time since I was a kid myself that a marriage should come before the children because theoretically the children leave and you are stuck with your spouse, and if you haven't spent any meaningful time with your spouse for 18 or so years, then what are you going to talk about when the kids aren't there anymore? And also I do agree that, children see what the adults around them do and they model that in their adult behaviors, so it's good to have healthy role models in that way. So, of course, I wouldn't say it has to be a woman and a man and modeling that relationship. It could be two women, it could be two men. Essentially, so long as you're healthy and happy and not engaging in destructive behaviors, you're a good role model. I'm an excellent role model. So Michelle says that in her marriage, she and her husband operate more as equals. Others prefer the husband to be the clear leader of the family with the wife as his helpmate. Interesting. So Michelle recommends that you go on dates, do little favors for your spouse that will be a surprise, be romantic, plan something fun, pray together if you are people of faith. If you are people of faith. I did not think that was optional to be conservative, but okay. Couples shouldn't try to find time to spend together, they need to make time. I agree with that. What would happen if you committed to coming home from work early occasionally? Well, depending on your job, what would happen would be you get fired, but I think we're only talking about rather privileged people in this book, so I guess if you make, less than $50,000 a year, you don't really count in Michelle's eyes. She recommends backing each other up, which is good. When I was growing up, I would always ask my mom something. Can I have a friend over or whatever? And she would say, ask your dad. So I'd ask my dad and he would say, I don't care. And then I would go right back to mom and then she would sigh and be like, fine. I somehow don't think that's quite what Michelle means here. Sometimes parents won't agree with each other and a compromise may be in order. That's normal. But if you argue in front of your daughter, make sure to resolve the dispute in front of her if possible. The last thing she needs is to feel like she has to take sides. Yeah, this isn't a bad chapter. I didn't see any fear-mongering in it. And if I'm supposed to disagree that a marriage comes before the children, my bad. Of course, our next heading is model conservatism and allow your daughter to grow. When trying to raise a conservative daughter, remember the goal isn't to force her to think a certain way, nor is it to shower her with praise or show her who's boss. It's to guide her to become the best person she can be while instilling conservative values. Rather than sermonizing constantly on specific policy issues, that would be really weird if you're sermonizing on policy to your 8-year-old, help your daughter develop self-reliance, kindness, and faith, conservative virtues. Promote her intellectual curiosity and desire to achieve. Model conservative values in your own life and watch her flourish. When I was a girl, my parents taught me the classic conservative values of self-reliance and hard work. Sure, I was loved and supported, but I was expected to work and solve my own problems in protected areas like school. I learned that hard work was rewarded in life and that entitlement wasn't an option. Every morning before my siblings and I would leave the house for school, my father would exhort us to get in there and fight. Dad never said, go out there and be careful, or call me and I'll take care of it. He taught me that life is a looming battle waiting to be fought, so you have to get in there and make a difference. Well, I'm not really sure it's good to teach that you have to fight in the world. I think we fight too much in the U.S., but that's just my opinion. Although I'm not really sure where she gets that self-reliance, kindness, and faith are conservative virtues only. I mean, she does know that leftists get married, go to church, help others out. I kind of feel like in Michelle's mind, do leftists even really exist? Because they seem kind of like some sort of weird boogeyman that is made up for the sake of convenience. Like, don't be this, the leftist boogeyman will get you. Putting family first also means learning to let go and send your daughter into the world at some point. Parents can certainly help, but when mom and dad hover and take care of everything, they are not allowing their girl to grow. Start with the approach that you can never be too loving. You are not going to spoil your daughter by loving her too much. That only happens when you give her things in place of love. Every child has moments when she resists what she needs to do. Don't let your daughter off the hook. Help her navigate challenges without solving them for her. If she fails or if she messes up, don't always bail her out. That only invites more problems and a dependency or preference for others to fix her mistakes. Playing it safe doesn't allow for growth, and conservative women need to take healthy risks in life to effect change. conservative women. It's also critical that you recognize your daughter's uniqueness. What works for the child may not be the best for her. She also mentions establishing general ground rules to help your daughter know where she stands. So yeah, I mean, that chapter is fine, except for the idea that conservatives have a lock on virtues. Now we're going to talk about safety. Early years are a time of innocence, and it's incumbent on parents to protect their daughters as a first order of family business. Threats aren't just physical. Parents need to protect their daughters from damaging cultural influences and corrosive social media. Never in history have girls been more exposed to immoralism in all forms. Unfortunately, school is another area where parents must be more involved. When I grew up, parents mostly shared the same values. We didn't have K through 12 political controversies, anti-American curricula, or boys in the girls' bathroom. But leftist agendas now pop up as early as elementary school. Oh boy. Did you know that many school systems teach 12 years of compulsory sexual education disguised as something called family life? I live in Fairfax County, Virginia, a suburb of Washington, D.C., and our schools, both public and private, are considered high-performing. Okay, nice humble brag. But some of the things they teach children are totally inappropriate, like the multi-year sex ed program that was forced on my middle child. But not your other children? There was definitely a weirdo agenda behind it. Direct quote, there was definitely a weirdo agenda behind it, and some of the content was just bizarre. What was the content? We should just take her word for it, because at this point, I don't really trust Michelle's definition of leftist or of what sex ed is, because, well, I will get to that in a second. We objected, and the school made it difficult for us to opt out. They sent my child to the library instead to complete large research projects, and that was in the 5th grade. When I was in 5th grade, I had my very first sex ed class, and it was essentially, you put boys and girls in separate classrooms and teach the girls about periods and ovaries and things like that, and then we switched, and the girls were taught about the boy stuff. And I don't understand why she thinks that was inappropriate. Does she think 5th grade is too young for that kind of information? She doesn't specify what her middle child was being taught, but I imagine it was something very similar to what I learned in 5th grade, which was actually very useful because that was the year I got my period, so that information was not too soon because whether I liked it or not, I did not like it. I had to deal with periods way before I was ready for it, but at least I knew what it was about and that it was normal. But I'm not really sure what she expected them to do. They made it difficult for us to opt out. How? How was it difficult? And what else were they supposed to do but except they sent the child to the library, okay, to complete large research projects. What does a large research project look like for a 5th grader? Kids who didn't participate were made to feel stigmatized by teachers, by staff, because that would be wrong. But if it's by other kids, well, I mean, that's just kind of what kids do. We pulled him out of our neighborhood government-run school shortly thereafter. I love how every mention of the government is like quietly fear-mongering. But we believe that protecting our child's moral formation was important. How does one sex ed class in 5th grade destroy your child's moral formation or affect it in any way? The point is that parents have to know what's going on in their children's schools. You can't allow politically driven administrators to have free reign over your daughter. There was a time when you could trust teachers and administrators, not anymore. We recently had a local school board vote where 11 of 12 board members voted to allow boys in the girls' bathrooms. Only one member raised her hand to dissent from such an obviously bad decision. Michelle, maybe you shouldn't speak about things that you don't understand. If these policies are proliferating around the nation's capital, they will almost certainly arrive in your city or town if they haven't already. Don't scare people unnecessarily, Michelle. I mean, you're just making people paranoid. If your daughter is in school, whether public or private, get involved. You don't have to run for PTO president, but you need to see what's going on. What types of values are being taught? What is she learning? Are they teaching the revisionist anti-American 1619 project, or is 1776 or 1789 the year of America's founding? Boys will often come home and mock their teachers. You'll know exactly what's off in their classrooms. But girls may not be so forthcoming. In my experience, girls more often want to protect their parents from controversy. She goes on to talk about social media and how honesty is the best policy when it comes to it. Kids today have never known a world without the internet, and banning access to it is not realistic. When it's not pitting us against each other, social media sells an idealized version of life that is not reality. And her solution to social media is to get back to basics. Restrict access to harmful websites and curtail general screen time. And if she was raising her kids now, she would delay giving them a cell phone as long as possible, even though all the other kids have one. Never allow technology to distract from family time. And above all, encourage your daughter to develop in ways that far surpass social media approval. Why should she settle for an empty online life when she can spend time with family and friends and enrich her real life? Encourage her to look at the real world more than she stares at a screen. Teach her to join a church youth group and support fulfilling pursuits like music, art, and sports. Let her see you reading good books so she does too. Some great books I highly recommend include Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Montgomery? Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, The Diary of Anne Frank, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe series by C.S. Lewis, Pride and Prejudice and all the books by Jane Austen, but not all the books by Lucy Montgomery. An American Life, the autobiography of Ronald Reagan. She really does love Reagan. I'm still waiting for her to quote Bush. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith, and A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I agree with the book recommendations, although Lucy Montgomery, I'm still not over that. I mean, this is fine. This applies to everyone who's raising kids. So I don't understand her need to fearmonger about... I just realized that she's saying that school never used to be a political place, but by saying all this stuff about what's going on in schools now, she's making it a political place. And also probably adding more shame for parents who don't have the time to get involved with their children's school. Balance is the key to family and career. An essential element to raising a conservative daughter is for parents to make sure that they themselves raise their children, not government, not school, and not pop culture. That's what it means to put family first. But how can parents do this in an age when careers take priority over family? Breadwinners often work long hours to provide for their loved ones. Unfortunately, that can do more harm than good if they are rarely home or too tired to cherish their daughters when they are. It's not just a breadwinner problem either. Probably do more harm to be homeless or not have enough food to eat, but family suffers when careers are always put first. Building a career is exciting and a mother or father may be passionate about his or her work, but your daughter needs you. She needs your time and for you to be present during shared time. The key is being present mentally and emotionally to create quality time with her. That's why balance is so important. When she wants to talk, shut off your phone and close your laptop. I know this can be really hard to do with the kinds of jobs so many of us have today, but it is important. It shows her she's a priority. So per Michelle, both she and her husband had successful careers, but from the beginning they prioritized their marriage and children. But our jobs promoting conservatism were important to our family and our country. Most married women and mothers work today, so there is a constant balancing act between work life and home life. There are some benefits of this arrangement, especially for daughters. Children grow up seeing what work looks like. A strong work ethic helps a girl realize that one day she can also have a family and a career if she chooses. Girls need to see possibilities. They need to learn that you have to work hard no matter what you choose to do. You study hard in school, you work in your relationships, and you work to make yourself the kind of person you want to be. I see nothing wrong with this, and I don't see how it's a conservative value. Plan family events and guard them jealously. Consider grounding your family first commitment on the dinner table. Make it a goal and build on it. You may be surprised by how quickly the simple, consistent act of breaking bread with your daughter can enrich your relationship. Where better to express your conservative perspective with her? Where better for her to learn from you? Many of our children's friends scoffed at them for having to be home for dinner every night. Really? Did that really happen? Because I have doubts. I guess they were just surrounded by a bunch of liberals who just let their children, leftists, who just let their children run wild, and then they grow up entitled and dependent on the government. And another quote by Reagan. Let me offer lesson number 1 about America. All great change in America begins at the dinner table. So tomorrow night in the kitchen, I hope the talking begins. And children, if your parents haven't been teaching you what it means to be an American, let them know and nail them on it. That would be a very American thing to do. Give and you shall receive. A major flaw in leftist ideology and feminism is that they are selfish mindsets. How is it selfish to want other people to have more than what they're currently being given? It's a me-first outlook. Family first is about giving. The happiest women I know prioritize their families and give the most. They elevate their loved ones by serving them and in return receive the blessings and joy that come through giving. Unfortunately, that concept is lost on women who believe that marriage and children hold them back. Or worse, that it's a tool of patriarchal oppression. They end up missing out on so much that life has to offer. I do believe, and it's not a belief, it's just a fact, that marriage was patriarchal in the past, but it does not have to be so in the present day. And if you're a woman and you want to get married, wunderbar, go ahead and do so. If you're a woman and you don't want to get married, also wunderbar, go ahead and don't do so. I'm constantly amazed at how women's activist groups push selfish pathologies. The Love Your Body campaigns, for example, go out of their way to embrace unhealthy lifestyles. Being proud of who you are and how you look is a good thing, except when your health is at risk. If your daughter struggles with her weight, encouraging fitness is deemed fat shaming by some. So part of the Love Your Body thing is that you can be healthy and still be overweight. You can eat right and exercise and still be overweight. There are medical conditions and medications that can cause weight loss to be next to impossible. And that is why Love Your Body is a thing. You can also be skinny and be unhealthy. A giving mindset is tied to faith and it involves sacrifice. Some call it the I'm third approach. Trust in God, give to others, then pursue your desires. The mystery of giving is that you receive more than what you give, but that's not why we do it. We give because we love and because it's the right thing to do. Really? So if conservatives love to give so much, then why are they so stingy? How you talk to your daughter is every bit as important as what you want to say. That applies to spouses too. Families need to have dinner together, sit together, tell stories, laugh, and talk things through. They need traditions. Whether it's Christmas, Hanukkah, Thanksgiving, Independence Day, or an annual vacation, family traditions keep the spirit of giving alive. They also give a girl something fun and meaningful to look forward to. Yeah, I agree with that. I really loved my family traditions growing up. Giving can look many different ways, but ultimately it is about love. Yes, one can give too much, and that's something to consider. But when an I'm third approach is taken, marriage and parent-child relationships are infused with grace. Giving creates loyalty and closeness. It means not judging a loved one too harshly when he or she makes a mistake. Rather, it involves serving that person's needs. When your daughter makes a mistake, give her the gift of forgiveness and consequences. Emphasize your strengths, share your experiences, and stay connected with her even when she pushes you away. What bounces back may surprise you. So the next chapter is America is Exceptional and Worth Defending. I'm sure that one will be interesting. But so, like I mentioned, there's good stuff in here. And then she veers off into the left boogeyman, and it just is like, why? And it also disturbs me that she didn't think it was worthwhile to get facts for what she was saying about the ERA. I mean, she'll, get things from the Heritage Foundation and all that, but she can't be bothered to see if what Phyllis Schlafly said about the ERA was true. I mean, come on. It's really disappointing because I think Michelle is probably a good person, but the picture she paints of conservatives is the idealized version and not what we actually have. I mean, maybe some conservatives do what she's advocating for, but what we have in Congress right now is definitely not at all living up to what she espouses in her book. Such a disconnect that I just can't wrap my mind around it. Okay, well, I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Please, what did I say? Please like, subscribe, and comment if you care to do so. Follow my socials below, and I will see you next week. Bye!